Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Financial Literacy Webinars presented by Gainbridge, a digital platform of financial products and member of Group 1001, an insurance holding company. My name is Cheryl Lala Chavez, and I'm joined every month by Lauren Williams, a four-time Olympian and certified financial planner. In each one of our episodes, we'll also have a Parity Athlete Ambassador. This month, we welcome Natasha Hastings, gold medalist and two-time Olympian for Team USA, philanthropist, speaker, and mom. Welcome to you both.
Hey, thank you.
It is good to be here as always.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you both. Today, we're having a conversation on saving and planning for retirement financially. As athletes, we can have multiple retirements and career changes. This situation makes financial planning increasingly difficult, for our later years. Natasha, let's start with you. You are retiring from professional sports while actively pursuing your graduate degree. How much in this process have you thought about planning for financial retirement while pursuing this career change?
I don't know that I thought about them simultaneously. Because honestly, I don't know that I thought about going back to school until COVID hit, honestly. But, I knew that the end of my career would come someday. So there were two things that I knew. I knew I had to save some money, but I also knew that I was going to have to find a new career. But I didn't necessarily know what that career was. But I wanted to have enough of a buffer to have time to figure that out, if you will. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely, right? I think one of the reasons we have a lot of these conversations and talks about financial literacy and even career changes as an athlete is because there's so little information that's out there about these topics, right? And so that's what we try to do through these webinars is kind of talk about the things that people aren't talking about in the athletic world. So, Lauren, athlete or not, many people don't plan for retirement, right? What are some strategies that you, as a certified financial planner, use to motivate your clients to kind of save for retirement?
Many people is an understatement. I would say most people don't plan for retirement. But coming from the sports background, I think the analogies are very similar. We need to set a goal. So you want to be an Olympian, but it starts with a practice. It starts with showing up at practice every day on time. It starts with doing, various workouts. Sometimes workouts go poorly, but you continue to show up the next day. I talk to my clients about continuing to show up on a regular basis, even when they make a mistake. Or like, oh, I know I should have bought that purse. Or, oh, no, I should, you start shaming yourself. You get kind of in this rut. It's important to pick yourself back up and be consistent. So I have stopped saving for a bit, but overall I've been saving on a regular basis. Like, okay, you're being consistent. Focus on the consistency, or I drop my savings down, but I'm still doing it. You're being consistent. And the idea is that ultimately you'll get to the finish line, which is retirement. And I think Tasha brought up a really good point about the idea of like, we don't know as athletes, like what the first retirement is going to look like. And then there's this whole second retirement that's going to come. And as much as we want to, or even if we have some awareness around the idea that our career is going to end, it's really hard to just be like, oh, I know, I definitely want to do this thing next. There are very, very few athletes that know like what exactly they want to do and have taken steps to be able to do that thing, life after sport, because we pour so much into it. So we have this first retirement coming, and then we have a second one coming, just like everyone else. And it's a really tough thing to have to work through, but we can manage it.
Absolutely. Natasha, you're a mental health and financial literacy advocate. What is important for you to tell other athletes about thinking about their financial outlook?
Yeah, I think the thing that I find funny is I don't think that we think about our relationship with money. I don't even think that I necessarily thought about it until like getting into the mental health space where, relationships is just the thing that we study. And even your relationship with money determines or is reflective in how you save, how you spend, how you view money, how you view whether like you're someone that holds on to money or you're someone that's afraid of, losing money. Those are all reflective in how, you behave with money, even in the aspect of, Lauren, you can kind of attest to this transitioning from like a professional athlete to a professional where as an athlete, I tell people one of the spaces that's uncomfortable for me is negotiating, because as an athlete, I had someone that did that for me. So now moving into the professional space and looking at, okay, this is money that I used to make. This is money that I would like to make in this new profession. How do I create making that, money that I want to make, but then also going into the space of being comfortable to ask for what I'm worth and what I bring to the table. And a lot of that lies in your relationship with money. And I think it's can be hard, especially in, I say, the athletic communities and communities of color, where, financial literacy is not discussed, but a lot of it lies in our relationship with money and how we view money and how, we see it come and go.
Tasha is giving a whole sermon over there. Amen,
Yeah,
amen,
she
and
is.
amen. Yes. Our relationship with money is our relationship with life. And life started well before we were actually earning money. We were in these careers. It started with watching our parents earn money or maybe not earn money. It started with watching your siblings and how they handle their finances, your upbringing. The first time you go to college and you come from a different background and you see all sorts of different backgrounds. All of those things are shaping the way that you think about money. And to Tasha's point, some people are, hoarding every dollar. We don't talk a lot about that. We talk about the big spenders and people that can't save. That's more of a narrative, but there are absolutely people who save too much as a part of a money narrative that they're dealing with that is a mental struggle for them. So you first have to understand like what money messages you are dealing with and then how you need to redirect your messages, I think is a key piece of the puzzle if you want to be really good with your finances. Yeah, I'll just stop there because I could just go for days because you said so many things.
No, I think that sounds great. So let's kind of dig into retirement here, Lauren. Can you break down the types of retirement accounts and why Social Security may not be enough to cover, our expenses down the line?
Absolutely. So for retirement accounts, if you're an athlete, you want to be thinking about a SEP IRA or a solo 401k. SEP IRA is a really popular one in the, especially the track and field community. It's easier to open and set up on your own without having like a financial advisor that you're working with. A solo 401k is going to give you a better opportunity to be able to save more money. But if you're only able to save, let's say $5,000 as an example, the SEP IRA is easier because it's easier to get the $5,000 into it. If you're a person that is earning $300,000 or $400,000 a year, or even $200,000 or $300,000 a year, you might want to do what we call maxing out the solo 401k, which is now like $62,000 you can get into it. So you want to just figure out like, what is my ability to save as a step number one? And then you want to think about the SEP IRA or the solo 401k for most athletes. One other account that's really simple and easy is the traditional IRA or the Roth IRA. So those allow you to put up to $6,000 in them. And if you are an athlete that earns, more in the 50 or 75K range, saving $6,000 a year is going to be a really big percentage of your income. And that's a nice, easy account that you can set up. So those are things you want to be thinking about. And to your point, Cheryl, there's Social Security. So a lot of our parents or grandparents, depending on what age you are using Social Security to help supplement their retirement. And we're seeing that they're not able to live off of just the Social Security alone. So what a lot of people thought is that, I have to give part of my paycheck to this thing called Social Security. I don't need to save for retirement because it's going to take care of me. And then they've been rudely awakened by the fact that Social Security doesn't cover what their real living expenses are. So we have a responsibility to save for ourselves because one, Social Security, the people don't believe that it might be around, but two, it's definitely not going to be enough to cover your regular monthly living expenses. So Social Security and saving, but saving like there is no Social Security is your best bet. And let Social Security be something extra that comes along, or that's a little extra paycheck if it is still around when we are old and gray.
Gotcha. So Natasha, as we hear Lauren talk, what type of retirement accounts are you most interested in pursuing?
Definitely the IRA. And I've talked about that a little bit with my own advisor, and that one is the one that's more appealing to me because the 401k is great, but it also sounds better if I had someone to match it. And unfortunately, in our sport, we didn't have. But as I move into possibly working in a university setting or in a school setting, then that's something that becomes more appealing to me. I also include this in my retirement plan because I was a little older when I when I had my kid. So by the time he's in college, I've started thinking about that too. And so I've started, putting money aside for him to go to school because for me, I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to pay for school and stuff. But, for him, if he gets a scholarship, great. If not, I do want to have more of these conversations earlier with him. And also, if I can give him a head start, we've got a little nest egg for him too. So he's also a part of my second retirement plan now, if you will.
Yes, I think this session should be called long-term planning because it's so important to be thinking into the future. That's exactly what retirement planning is. And to your point, a 529 plan for your child is planning into the future. Someone's born and they've got 18 years of you looking after them before they can go to college. Why not take that time and put a little bit aside so that you're not having to deal with the burden of, oh my goodness, I want to give my child the best opportunities possible, but I didn't save for it. Saving a little bit now versus having to come up with 40 grand a year for 4 years when they're 18 is like money doesn't just fall out of the sky. And it also speaks to paring down your lifestyle and making sure that you are living a lifestyle not based on what you're bringing home, but based on what you really want to be able to save and then living off the rest of what's left over. And I think earlier you brought up a really good point too about how our incomes change as athletes. You may be earning one way, 6-figure income as an athlete, and then you move over into a profession and we're starting from the bottom of the totem pole and it's an
Mhm.
entry level 30 or 40K salary, and it's like, wait a minute, if you built $100,000 lifestyle, now you got to figure out how to live off of 40,000. It creates some problems and you're just like, this doesn't feel good. It's much better to say, like, what's a reasonable, while I'm earning 100K, let me live off of 40 or 50K. So now, one, I'm a good saver and I put myself in a good position for retirement. To your point, also having a nest egg so that you can kind of figure out that life after sport piece of the puzzle. But then above and beyond that, I don't have to change my life drastically as I transition into whatever it is that I want to do life after sport. Because one of the big misconceptions for us as athletes is that, we're never going to have to work again. Some of us come from a background where, like you said, a parent was earning 40 or 50 grand, but you didn't really know what that was or what that meant, and you started earning 200,000 as an athlete, you're like, I'm rich, woohoo! But 200,000 is not enough, after a 5 or 7 year career to retire and never work again. It is a great income for a 20-something-year-old, but you need to be really, really diligent with that. And so I think those are the things that we need to be thinking about as athletes.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Gainbridge has a financial education center on their website. Under Planning for Retirement, you'll be able to find the articles we're talking about today, including tips on annuities and maximizing retirement savings. Lauren, there's an article on FIRE lifestyle. What is FIRE lifestyle and how does this help an athlete?
Oh, fire. Fire is a movement, if you will, that gets, a lot of people in trouble sometimes. So FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. And so that means that you want to be able to retire at some point well before normal retirement age, which is around 67 right now. The way that people do this is they lower their expenses drastically. So, like I said, take that same person that's living off that earns $100,000 a year and they're living off of $30,000 a year. So they're saving, 70% of their income in this example, but they set up a lifestyle that they like on the $30,000 a year. Hit the number. Usually it's 25 times whatever it is that you find out is your expenses. And they get that put in the bank. So, let's say you get $1 million in the bank really quickly, and then you're like, okay, well, I can pull $30,000 out of that money every year. It's still going to continue to grow and I can live off of that. Now it takes the pressure off of you to, go out and do whatever you want. So you're effectively retired, but you're retired with some really low living expenses. So it's a cool concept, but most people have a really hard time figuring out how to get their expenses down so drastically that they can retire really early unless they earn a bunch of income.
Natasha, what are your thoughts on FIRE lifestyle? Had you heard of that before?
I had not heard of that before. I mean, because so we're talking about relationship with money, right? And
Yeah.
I have this mindset that like I have had to adjust. Like, I was training. I'm also a mom now and a mom in school. But while I've had to adjust, I've also said like, but I've also worked really hard. And so I'm going to be mindful of, I still have to plan for the future. I still have to, I think, Lauren, you mentioned this earlier that like you go through a phase where like you're kind of like, okay, I'm looking at my savings, I'm looking at how things are going. But I also know that I had this conversation the other day talking about like being in school and feeling so busy and stuff. And I was like, I feel like I can't hustle the way that I'm used to hustling. And my friend was like, yeah, but you got to think about this time of your life as like your off season where like you're intellectually in school putting in the work so that when you move into the professional world now, after you earn your degree, it's like the track season again, kind of comparing it in that way. So I'm like mindful of like, okay, I've got to be cautious these next few years while I'm working towards my graduation and my licensure. But I'm also gonna be, I worked hard. So I'm
Yeah.
not gonna the fire sounds like I'm gonna suffer, so that in the end I can live great, which sounds great. If that works for you, great. But like, yeah, absolutely. I've had to make some cuts and some changes here. Talking about like, saving for my son, like even though I'm doing this now, taking, a little, I'm still earning, but I'm still like having to take a little bit out of my savings to do my education at this time. But like, I'm still saving for my son. Like that was one thing that I was like, it's 529. We're still going to move this every month. It comes out. I don't even know it's gone. That's just, so Lauren kind of reaffirmed some of that because there is, if I'm honest, anxiety around that
Yeah.
because a couple of things that we haven't hit on that like we don't plan for is inflation. Because I went grocery shopping the other day and my girlfriends are tired of hearing me say this, but I'm like, I bought cream cheese the other day for $6.
Wow.
So there are things that, inflation, taxes, like all of these things are happening while we're planning for, I'm working through this time right now. I'm putting chips in the bank, so to speak, but it is kind of anxiety inducing where it's like, okay, I'm ready to get out there and get back. But that's also me part of working on my relationship with money too, right? Like, okay, trust the process, trust that like as I move into this space, like I'm working diligently now of like how I'm walking into that room and saying, this is what I'm bringing, this is what I'm worth. Go ahead and give me what I'm
Absolutely.
worth. All of those things are a part of the process. Fire ain't for me though.
I love it.
I
Right.
think you
Yes.
bring up you brought up some really good points though about, and I love your friend's analogy about like off season versus like actual season. So like we spend the time in the off season investing in ourselves, and that's what you're doing right now so that we can go out and earn to our peak potential when we hit the track. So that's exactly how it works with like I'm going to school, I'm investing in this education, look, maybe I'm going to debt to get this education sort of situation, but I know on the other end the return on my investment that I'm expecting. So I love that. But the key piece of the puzzle is patience during that time, which is a hard thing to do, as we're counting down the days to the games or counting down the days until the trials, like you're just like, oh my goodness, like when is it coming? But also like, like I'm trying to be patient, I'm trying to execute, but I needed also to hurry up and get here so I can, get my flowers and stand on the crowd, like stand on the podium. Like, yeah, it's definitely a hard thing to just like manage, like, and then the other piece of the puzzle is like you said, control what you can control. There are some things outside of your control, but the things that you can control, we absolutely need to stay on top of. And there are, your savings, prioritizing what's important to you. Your son's education is important, like prioritizing that, and your savings, like, all right, I'm controlling what I can control. You're going to be okay on the other side of inflation and this economic disaster because you stayed the path and you were patient all along the way. So I think those are key pieces of the puzzle.
Absolutely. So, Natasha, let's talk about kind of like the flip side of this a little bit. How does debt affect your life and decisions to retire from sports as well as like financial planning for the future?
Yeah. So that part of the relationship, right? Up until I retired, the only debt I had was my mortgages, right? And, now I did take out a small loan the first semester that I did because I started somewhere else because I didn't want to touch my cash. Also, I was a new mom, new
Hmm.
single mom. And so, I'm trying to make conservative choices. And so now having a little bit of debt again is another piece of like, because the debt that I had where it was like my mortgages, I can leverage that debt, right? And that's kind of how I was looking at it because, I sold one of my houses, I made a nice profit. And now I'm just kind of looking at that student loan, even though it's really small.
Hmm.
I could pay it off right now, but I'm also like, there's inflation. I'm still in school. I'm still, working that out. So yeah, that is something that's interesting because I don't like that. Although, I'm learning more of like, the relationship with money and the relationship with debt. If you're disciplined and you can leverage it, there are great ways to use debt, but it is something that as I'm again in this space now, it's kind of like, okay, I see